Have you ever been ignored by someone you can't stop thinking about? Well, that happened to me last year. I was really into a guy who didn't even give me a second look, and I couldn't stop thinking about him. To make matters worse, he was my boss. My name is Tabitha, and I'd like to say that what I'm about to tell you about ends being a great love story. But life doesn't work that way. But it's an exciting anecdote nonetheless. So let me tell you all about Jason and my hopeless crush on him. I was never a shy girl. In fact, I was usually the most popular girl at my school. It wasn't because I was the coolest or because I wore the latest trends. I just knew how to get people to like me, I guess. In high school, I was editor of the school's newsletter and president of the student council. It was easy for me to talk to people and make them relate to me. So that really helped when it came to being elected and getting people to agree to an interview. My dad was a diplomat, and that meant that I got to travel a lot and learned many languages growing up. I can speak English, French, and Chinese fluently, Spanish only conversationally. Dad wanted me to grow up to become a career diplomat just like him, but I couldn't imagine living that kind of life. I love traveling, yes, but not hosting constant parties and having to behave like a perfect lady 24/7. It just didn't fit my lifestyle. Plus, I wasn't a really girly girl, so I didn't like being all dressed up and covered in makeup. Being a diplomat, you always have to be on your best behavior and be super careful about what you say and to whom. I was always goofier and more casual, so instead, I decided to become a journalist. I can't tell my dad was crazy about the idea, but he still paid for my college. I think the fact that my older brother followed his footsteps made it easier for him to accept my decision. Still though, I'm sure he loves me dearly. I also know that every single time I visit home, he'll go, "Oh, Tabitha, you had such potential." I try and smile instead of getting mad and reply, "And I promise I'll live up to it, Dad." He then gives me a hug and my mom offers me cookies. After this initial tense conversation, we chat about family stuff for the rest of my visit. Dad knows when to stop talking about an uncomfortable issue. He's made a living out of it, after all. Anyways, after I graduated from college, I got an internship at this fantastic newspaper. I couldn't believe it. Sure, I had graduated top of my class and had a whole portfolio worth of articles, but I still was stunned when I got accepted. This was a significant first step to boost my career, and I was going to try and learn as much as I possibly could. I knew I'd be working with experienced journalists, and I wasn't going to be flaunting my family's money or influence around. I was there to learn and grow, not to show off. So I bought comfortable, if appropriate, semi-casual outfits for my new job. Everyone thought I was middle class at best, and I never told them otherwise. I rarely invited my coworkers over to my flat because, well, they'd realize I came from money. As a graduation gift, my dad had bought me an amazing studio apartment downtown in one of the trendiest neighborhoods in the city. It was fully furnished, though I did add a few touches to feel right at home. That included an old but super well-maintained typewriter that I have to admit cost a small fortune. I also had a few first edition signed copies of my favorite books, so all of this would immediately make it obvious I didn't come from a working class family. Anyways, on my first week at my new job, I met him, Jason. Oh God, he was totally hot and a big snob. He only wore the most expensive suits, and you could tell they were tailor-made. His haircut cost more than most people's entire outfits, and he drove an insanely expensive car. Well, in fact, he drove the same car that I did. The thing was, I rarely drove it to the office, and if I did, I made sure to leave it at a nearby parking lot, so no one really knew if I arrived by car or riding the bus. That was the way I wanted it to be. Jason was a big shot editor, and he had received several awards for his articles. I truly admired him for his work, but even more so, I drooled over how handsome and brilliant he was. The problem was, Jason could be an utter jerk. There's no way around it. He wasn't a very pleasant guy, mainly if you worked for him. Well, the thing is, I tried to impress him. I went out of my way to talk to him and write the very best pieces I could. He ignored my every attempt and looked my way like I was trash. That was incredibly mean, but I still couldn't help but have the biggest crush on him. Whenever the journalists went out drinking together, He would make up an excuse or flat out tell us, "I have far better plans than hanging out with you guys at a dive bar." Yeah, I know, he was a jerk. But I still tried my best to get his attention. I picked up the hardest subjects to write about and stayed up all night trying to come up with the perfect article. When I presented it to him in the morning, he barely even gave it a read and handed it over to a junior editor. I was so frustrated. I wanted him to notice me so badly, but he just ignored me day in and day out. Believe me, I even resorted to wearing a tight, short dress one morning to a meeting I knew he would be attending. I was looking amazing and got asked out by 3 coworkers before lunch, but Jason didn't even look at me. It was as if I was invisible. He was making me feel really frustrated. I wasn't used to people not paying any attention to me. I usually could charm people into liking me. But with him, I couldn't even make small talk without messing up. "The weather is amazing today, isn't it?" I asked once while we rode the elevator together. I figured at least I could use that silliness as an opening to talk about something more interesting. Jason stared at his wristwatch, then at the floor number the elevator was on, and finally at me with a clearly irritated stare. "Yeah, I guess so," he replied dryly, and immediately looked back ahead. I tried to get another word in, but he stepped away the second the elevator's doors opened. He was impossible. Everyone in the office warned me against him, too. "Don't worry about Jason, he's a jerk to everyone," the girl who sat next to me told me once. "He's a total snob and only dates super wealthy women. It's disgusting. He only sees wallets instead of people walking around him," Sarah, the girl I usually had lunch with, said more than once. She really wasn't a fan of him at all. In fact, most of my coworkers didn't like him. This situation went on for months until I was invited to an office party. They were celebrating a big award the newspaper had gotten, so it was a semi-formal affair. I decided to dress up to the nines and finally throw caution to the wind. That meant actually driving my super expensive car to the event and using a designer dress. When Jason saw me parking my car and getting out dressed like a movie star, his jaw dropped. I walked inside the venue and he followed behind. "Hi, Tabitha, is it?" he asked, using my name for the first time since we met. I couldn't even believe he remembered it. Maybe he asked someone about it before walking over to me. I looked around and stared up and down at him. He was dressed in a super expensive suit and looked hot as hell. I had dreamed of him coming up to me and trying to impress me for months, but now it annoyed me. He didn't even notice me until he noticed I drove an expensive car and could afford designer clothes. My friend Sarah was right, after all. Jason didn't see people walking around him. He only saw wallets. And to him, the value of a person was equal to their income or something. I found that disgusting. And suddenly the handsome man I had drooled for became a ridiculous gold digger. "Yeah, Tabitha," I replied, but didn't bother smiling. "You look stunning tonight," he tried praising me, but I didn't react flattered at all. "Thank you," I said, and then I added, "I know." I didn't tell him how good he looked or how handsome he was or that I used to have such a big crush on him. I just gave him a clearly fake smile and then turned around and walked away. He stood there, dumbfounded, and I smiled to myself triumphantly. I had finally gotten over my feelings for a total jerk and managed to have the last word at the same time. It felt amazing. Jason tried to get my attention all night, but I completely ignored him, just like he had done to so many other girls and me for months. He probably had behaved that way all his life, and it was certainly time someone pulled him from his high horse. That was the night I noticed how amazing one of my coworkers actually was. One of the guys who had asked me out back when I was too obsessed about Jason to notice anyone else. I might give him a chance if he ever asked me out again. My boss sure learned his lesson that night, and I got over my stupid crush on him. Thanks for watching. Have you ever fallen for someone who didn't deserve your attention? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe and check out other videos on the channel.